Hey.
I think we'll get started. Good afternoon. My name is Lynn Schaefer, Vice President for Administration and Finance, and also your host for this parking forum targeted to students. And what I thought I would do is just give a little bit of background information about why we're holding these forums at this point in time. And then I'm going to turn over to our consultants to talk about specifics on the plans for parking. So I hope you don't mind. I'm keeping my notes here so that I make sure I get some of the numbers right, because it's a little complex. So back in 2006, we were planning for Performing Arts and Humanities building, and we were had a campus-wide discussion about where that building should be placed. It had originally in the master plan been placed at the south end of campus over by the athletic fields and the Commons Garage. And there was a strong sentiment on the part of especially the faculty and many of the students in the arts and humanities disciplines, that it should be at the north side of campus, closer to where those disciplines currently are located, and many would still be located after the building was done. So the decision was made at that time in 2006 to locate this new Performing Arts and Humanities building on the site of lots 9 and 16. And that's right just above Fine Arts, Engineering, and the ITE building. So then as we actually started getting funding for designing the building in 2008, we immediately began planning for parking and what kind of planning action steps that we could take to respond to that loss of, it turned out, 684 parking spaces in lots 9 and 16. So in 2008, we commissioned a study. And the goals of the study were to understand existing parking conditions, not just at 9 and 16 or at that end of campus, but really all throughout campus, to develop a plan to address the impact of the loss of those spaces, and then to evaluate the alternatives. First thing we did was an inventory. Turns out we have over 7,000 parking spaces on campus, located, as you can see, in all corners of the campus. This is a picture of it's a drawing of the new building, Performing Arts and Humanities building. Just a reminder that this is for a good cause. We're going to have this building where every single one of our undergraduate students will take classes, go to labs, those sorts of things in this new building. So the building, again, the footprint is within this red dotted area. And here's Fine Arts and Engineering and ITE, just to give you a sense of where we are on campus. So we had a parking utilization study in the spring of 2008. And we actually had 137 students that we engaged from 12 student organizations to go out and count all of the vacant spaces in all of the parking lots across the campus over a 12-hour period. And so they did that. And this very complex chart talks about the results of that study. And the key item of data here is this yellow line, which represents the percentage of parking spaces filled during peak times across the campus. So you can see at the very peak time, right here between 12 and 1, the parking lots were 75% utilized. And what we found further was that each of these lots, where each lot shows what their utilization was at their particular peak and what time their peak occurred. So we have several lots here where we're underutilized the existing parking. So based on this information, our parking consultants recommended that we reconsider our plans to actually build new parking to replace the lost parking. And they said, look, you have enough spaces on campus already. You just need to more efficiently utilize the spaces that you have available. So specifically, they found that we were operating at 75% of capacity during the peak time. There are sufficient spaces available on campus to address those lost due to the construction of Performing Arts and Humanities, and still have 15% of our spaces unused, which is kind of the margin that's a benchmark in the parking industry. If you have less than 15% of your spaces vacant, people really do perceive you as being full. And that there are a number of existing underutilized parking lots and garages, specifically those 13, 17, and 18, which are at the south end of campus, 20, 21, and 22, which are at the north end of campus, and the Walker parking garage. And these are some pictures that were taken in the spring of 2008. I don't believe that all of these were at the peak time, but pretty much every time you go to those lots, you can see this kind of condition. 22 is Hilltop, Walker Garage, especially at the top level. We have lots 13, 17, and 18. Those pretty much all the time look about like this. Here's lots 20 and 21 behind the Walker Apartments, and then the satellite lot for freshman parking. Another thing that the consultants told us is that, okay, you have enough parking spaces. They're not necessarily so convenient. They're also not very easily accessed. And so they made some recommendations for improvements that we can make to those existing underutilized lots that we're actually going to make this summer or very soon thereafter, including especially improved pedestrian crosswalks here, here, and here. The idea is that instead of having to go down that ravine between lot 17 and the campus, lot 17 and the campus, we're going to build some pedestrian walkways that traverse that much more readily. We're reconfiguring lot 5 and 12 so that you can circulate within the parking lot. Right now you have to leave one lot if there are no spaces and then drive out and get to the other lot. Now you'll be able to drive within. And then we're also putting in new bus stop and reconfiguring existing bus stops to make it more convenient for students to take public transit. In addition, there was a suggestion by the consultants that we look at some transportation demand management measures, and we are in the process of doing that, including zip cars. Zip cars, if you don't know, it's a membership program where there are cars available on campus that you can rent for an hour or 2 hours or whatever, and you pay for just the amount of time that you need it, thereby not eliminating the need to have a car on campus. Ride sharing, van pooling especially, we're working on a program for that, but also carpooling. Mass transit, improving the routes so that our buses and the MTA buses are going to and from where people actually are coming to and from for campus. Bike racks, we've already started adding bike racks to campus. Within a year or so, we expect to have capacity for over 200 bikes on campus. And then those pedestrian walkway improvements. So at the end of, I guess that was it. At the end of the study, we could see that it would make a lot more sense for us to try to utilize our existing parking, if at all possible, for two big reasons. The first reason was cost. To build a new deck to replace those spaces that are lost, it would add enormously to the cost of students, faculty, and staff to their annual parking fee. The other key point was that this is a campus that believes in sustainability. We're working really hard to reduce our carbon footprint, and to the extent that we can all work together to implement some of these strategies that actually reduce the needs for single occupant vehicles coming to campus, that's going to help us to reduce our carbon footprint. So as we went around over the course of the last year and talked to various groups on campus, there really was unanimous support to move in this direction. And so we decided that we needed more expertise in trying to figure out exactly what are we going to do to implement these things to get a very efficient parking system and address the needs of students, faculty, and staff who are going to be displaced with the construction of this new building. So we went out and obtained the services of Carl Walker Associates, and they have been here working with us for a number of months now, looking at the results of that study from 2008, and they've come up with a plan that we want to share with you. So I'd like to introduce Lee Burke, right here, and John Nolte, both of Carl Walker Associates, and Lee is going to talk about his plan, and if you would just tell them a little bit about your background, that'd be great.
Okay. Well, you want to...
Oh, here, you want the...
Probably,
you need this.
Blog up.
Good. You need this for the recording.
Okay. Let me take a second to slip it on. Well, I need an extra hand here. If you'll hold that for just a moment. It's a pretty significant clip. Okay.
Good.
Hopefully that's picking it up fine. All right. Well, since the slide's up on the screen now, this is the blog that's been set up for communication going back and forth. Students, faculty, staff, if they have questions, ideas, concerns, whatever related to the changes that are taking place. And in fact, this blog will probably stay in place through the course of the major study. We're going to be doing a long-term parking study that'll follow this kind of short focused study that we're doing to look at the immediate impacts of the new construction. But that'll be a blog set up for the entire campus community to communicate ideas and so forth, which will hopefully brew as we get through the study and start stirring up some more interest in little broader areas than just the things we're talking about today. Well, let me get back.
Presentations will be on there as well.
The what?
Our presentations.
Yes. Copies of the presentation. Let me get back to the beginning here. Well, you all know where the location of the new facility is going to be. Lynn just went through that. Taking up 684 spaces here in lots 9 and 16. Our real charge was to answer some questions. The first question was, do we have enough space in order to accommodate the folks that are going to lose their existing parking capacity? The second question is, how do we really do that in a way that's workable, makes sense, still maintains a pretty good level of efficiency for everyone, and also takes into consideration a lot of what's going on with the construction in the area where the lots are being lost and what kind of traffic impacts that might have, and what does that tell us in terms of how we really need to set up the parking changes. The basic numbers, the 684, based on that previous study, there really is space on campus somewhere to do that. And a lot of times those spaces are scattered all through the system. So we were looking for blocks of space where people could move, as opposed to saying, you can't park here, you're on your own, try to find a place on campus. The university really wanted to have a plan and say, here are the major areas where you can move. Slipping over to another issue, just changing subjects for a second, this gives you an idea of some of the numbers when you talk about building a parking deck, because that was on the table a while back. Do we want to build a parking deck or do we not want to build a parking deck? Basically, these numbers are significant, but yesterday during some of the other forums, I think that the most important number was, in order to build a parking deck and to pay for that parking deck, if you all were actually parking in it, it would cost you about $150 to $160 per month on a 12-month basis. If you put it on a 9-month, it'd be even higher. So that gives you some idea of what the cost of a parking deck really is. So the direction that the previous consultants urged them to go and the directions that we're urging them to go, concurring with that, is that you really need to find a way to use your existing resources because you have them and there's no point in putting that cost burden on the faculty, staff, and students. I don't know if you all are aware, and feel free to share it with other students, that under Maryland state law, state funds cannot be used for parking. So the students, faculty, and staff have to financially support the parking system. So whatever changes are made, if you build decks and it's a higher cost, then the students, faculty, and staff bear that cost. Back to the details again, we have the 684 spaces that are going to be lost. It's about 250, actually 248 faculty, staff spaces, 21 ADA spaces, and 414 students that are currently parking in that area. So what we were looking for were capacity where we could move the students to, and Lynn has already alluded to some of this. We have 325 spaces in the northwest quadrant, and the 533 vacant space. And this is not lot capacity. These are the number of spaces that were available that we could use to absorb. Now, those numbers have changed a little bit. In fact, we went over to 22, and we drove into it and said, immediately said, whoa, this is not anything like what we saw in the original study. But actually, and we're professionals, and drove in and had that impression as we drove in the beginning of the beginning of the lot. But as we went around and actually started counting spaces, there were 179 spaces. So we went ahead and counted all of the other lots that were the targets of the prospective moves, and the numbers are actually very close to what the previous study said. And we understand there's some fluctuation back and forth. And when you have class, the class schedule affects some of that, because the behavior patterns of the students, faculty, and staff changes a little bit. So those numbers go up and down. It shifts from day to day a little bit. So we are monitoring that right now. Helen's department is going to be doing some car counts, kind of an ongoing basis, to really get a good handle on what the numbers are. But at this point, we think it's going to work. The plan, number one, we're looking again at efficiency and some of the requirements of the university in terms of making things work. And the only thing that made any sense to us, and it wasn't that we had a lot of options to look at and said, well, this is really a little ahead of the other options. This to us appeared to be the only real option, is taking Lot 8. Do you all know where Lot 8 is? You don't. It's right across the street from the lot that's next to all the academic buildings. We back up. Lot 8. This is Lot 8 here. And this is the 9 and 16 that's being lost. So the plan is to take this lot and convert the use. Currently has students parking in it, 323 student spaces. Those would go away. And we would have to move the faculty and staff that are currently parking in 9 and 10, the lots that are disappearing, and moving them up to Lot 8. In addition, we have 15 car and van pool spaces that will be designated. First step in, or one of the first steps in TDM, or Transportation Demand Management initiatives, to try to encourage people to carpool. That's going to be a long-range goal of the university, because if you get carpooling and bicycling and so forth, you push down your parking demand, and it reduces the need to continually develop new parking. Also going to fix some problems with that lot. I don't know if you all park in the lot, you get to some dead ends and have to turn around and go back. Well, we're going to lose about 24 spaces by fixing the circulation issues that exist in that lot. So, and part of that is because it really should be done, because that's good design. But the other one is that a lot of activity is going to be going on near the entrance to that lot. And we don't want to have anything that's going to keep cars on the street. There's going to be construction activity, so any conditions that cause cars to slow and back up into the street is going to be problematic. So that affects two things. Number one is the use of the lot. We didn't see that it would gain anything by having 50 student spaces in there. That means it's 350 students would try to find out if there was parking in that lot, and there'd be continuous traffic going back and forth, simply because there's not enough capacity to do anybody any good. So we thought it was much more practical to just say, this is a faculty staff lot. We need some visitor spaces in that area. So basically the leftover, after we moved all the numbers around, we had 48 spaces left over with the police department and the faculty staff spaces and carpool. So that lot would be faculty staff primarily. So we're displacing 323 students from that lot. And where do they go? Well, theoretically, we can put them into lots 20 and 23. Excuse me, let me back up. 20 and 22, because you do have enough space to fit the cars in that lot. We still have 414 student spaces left to deal with. Those are the ones that are now in 9 and 16, the lots that are being they become the construction site. So we look to lots 13 and 17 with the 533 spaces that are available, and hopefully still about 533, maybe it's 450 at this point with a little bit of growth in the campus. We still have a little bit of a surplus, but it's starting to fill up. It's going to be a well-utilized lot, there's no question. The other thing that we're going to have to do is, currently we know that there's faculty and staff are parking on Hilltop Circle as well. So if that is faculty staff, we have faculty staff cars up there currently competing, but there's plenty of space for everyone. When we push the students out of lots 9 and 16, then the pressure for those on-street spaces is going to be very, very intense. So the faculty and staff wouldn't have a fighting chance unless they wanted to come in at 5 o'clock in the morning. The students are going to beat them out on the spaces. So we know that we're going to have to take a certain number of those Hilltop Circle spaces and designate them as faculty and staff. Otherwise, we'll have faculty and staff having to park on the other side of campus in order to try to get to class, and that's just not acceptable. So we're trying to measure that number. The number is probably 100 in that range at this point. We looked at putting this really relates more to the faculty and staff. We looked at gating that lot. We decided for traffic circulation issues or related to traffic circulation issues, that's not a good idea. So there's going to be some pretty heavy enforcement at the beginning of this to make sure the students know there's not even any point of turning down that street because there's nothing for the students down there. So the faculty and staff can feel fairly comfortable that they'll have their spaces without having a gate up. The administration is looking at what they might be able to do in terms of additional shuttle support for those outlying lots. It's right on the edge in terms of looking at it compared to other campuses. It's right on the edge of whether a shuttle is really going to do a lot of good, because a lot of students are just going to, you know, they're not going to wait 2 minutes for a shuttle. By the time I wait for the shuttle for 2 minutes, I can be all the way over there and I'm already on campus, and I'm as close in 2 minutes as I would be where I'm being dropped off by the bus. So we're going to be looking at some of those distances and walking times and so forth to see if it's really going to be beneficial to have a heavy shuttle service. But the administration really wants to make sure that the students have the support that they need, so they're going to be looking at that very closely. Again, pushing forward some of the TDM initiatives, trying to get people to take alternate transportation modes. That'll reduce some of the pressure even on Hilltop Circle. And that's basically it. That's what's happening. So we've been commenting some of the discussions in earlier forums about the walking distances and so forth. Have you all been to any other campuses? Have you ever, is this the only campus? What campus?
I've been to several, University of Delaware, College Park.
Okay.
Some of them are really big.
This is a very compact campus, and the walking distances really aren't that bad, even from the most distant lots. Now, this afternoon at 4 o'clock, it may be a little dicey with the snow blowing and the wind coming down. But the walking distances are really not too bad. And one of the design features of the campus is the fact that you have all of your academic core in one spot. It's pretty rare. Usually you have things spread all over because the campus is developed over a long period of time, and you end up with a lot of facilities spread all over. But here, once you get into the core, you're not having to move around very far. So it's the once in the day and once out in the afternoon for most folks. So, any questions?
Yesterday, 12:30, I tried to come on campus. I tried the very top lot at the top of the hill. There were cars driving around because there were no spots left in there.
Okay, let me back up. You show me where this is. Let me get the.
The new building is being placed.
Oh, okay.
Well, not even that one.
The one across the way, Hilltop 22.
Yeah, if you look at the top left lot there,
This?
325 spaces total.
Yes.
There were none there.
None at all yesterday? At what time?
There were cars walking, but people stalked me when I
Is that right?
walked out there
Okay.
to get
So you had the
my
vulturing going on. Okay.
Same thing down at the bottom right at the physical plant. The
Okay.
other day, I went up, that lot was full, so I went down and I got the last spot down there
In 18?
because that was full too.
17 was full, and so you had to go down to 18.
Poplar Avenue were
Yeah,
full.
all along here.
I used to live up at Walker, the very top one, and
Yeah.
well,
Up here?
was parked there because absolutely the furthest one away from all the
This one here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
And that's
sort of
usually,
what I'm thinking looking at this. I mean, there's a lot of spaces on campus, but people don't necessarily want to walk all the way over to Walker to get to their classes or wherever. There are a lot of parking spots, but I think convenience is a big deal for a lot of people.
and
Yeah.
one part of the problem is it's a hill you're walking up.
Yes.
And I've played sports, and I know if you walk from this side of campus all the way up to Walker in that parking lot.
Right, and you come down through
you have to
this.
take a break somewhere
Yeah.
and stop, catch your breath.
Yeah, this is a pretty good hill. We saw a lot of people walking this
Yeah.
path, and it's a pretty good trek. Now, one of the things I didn't talk about is the fact, and somehow looked over it, there is a lot of space in the back of this lot, and we checked it yesterday and the day before both. The Walker apartment folks are parking along Hilltop Circle. So, the what?
Bus stop, because we both used to live there and park there. We never had a problem with parking, which was kind of like we're guaranteed a spot.
Right.
So now with like, we could park any time of the day. It was very nice as opposed to living in Erickson or Potomac where we were like fighting for spots and
Right.
lots. Like Erickson's really inconvenient because there isn't any closest spot. It's
No.
all about the same.
Erickson is this? Where's Erickson?
Erickson's over here. I
Okay.
think.
Down in the,
It's one across the street, I think.
okay. That's Erickson?
I believe that'd be
And there's no like, the loop is kind of the same distance as the lots where, you know, people who are fighting to get into like, who are commuters going.
Right, they're competing
all
with,
fighting with the same
Mhm,
thing. So I would often have to park up in Walker and walk to Erickson. So I've lived like kind of all over campus and I actually participated in that parking study. I was one of the organizations who
Mhm.
did it. And it was kind of like in the evening. So, and I was in the lots you're talking about removing. So like as a student, like a commuting student, because now I commute to school, this sounds like a terrible idea. Like this is just scary because like we're fighting for spots now.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine like having to park so far away. Like I live 2 minutes away and having to leave like a half hour, hour before class because first I have to find a spot, which depending on where you go first, you know, maybe it's your best bet to park as far away from campus as possible and then just walk the 20 minutes that you're gonna have to walk. Like if this happens to people who are here now and like have this parking that they're fighting for now and then it's gonna switch and they're gonna be walking far away, they're gonna be really cranky. Like the transitional group of students who are gonna have to start, like they can park there now, but then they can't, they're gonna have to park really far away. They're gonna be really, really mad. So I don't know, I guess you'll just have to get over that and,
there's going to be some reaction, that's for sure.
yeah, I mean.
Well, let me,
For me, I'm really like.
Let me address a couple of specifics. One of the things we're looking at is the fact that these students are parking along Hilltop. So we may have to do some controls, meaning so that these people will have designated areas here that are Hilltop apartments, residential parking, but they'll have, in order for all these students to be accommodated, they'll have to park all back here and fill up this lot pretty well and move, and there'll only be a limited number of spaces for those students on Hilltop Circle because this parking lot is for them and it's really not much good for anybody else. So we need to get them to move back and use the parking that's been built for them.
The problem is, when I lived in Walker, at the middle of the night when there's no classes going on, I've seen that lot when there were only 25, 30 spots left.
In the
Just
back.
from people living in Hilltop and Walker, parking back there.
Okay.
And I know during the day, a lot of those cars leave, you know, some of them drive down to class, some of them go to work, some of them aren't there, but when it's, you know, when everybody's there, it's almost full.
Okay. And that's one of the things we're looking at is try to determine what is the nighttime loading and also how much movement do we have of cars going back and forth. Because one of the things that as consultants when we go to different universities, and I didn't introduce who we were and what we've done, we do studies for universities all over the country. My projects I've been managed are just finished Clemson University Parking and Transportation Master Plan. Did one same thing for Auburn, UNC Charlotte, Spelman College, West Georgia College, kind of going down the size order. Old Dominion University, which is where I graduated, down in Norfolk. But one of the things we look at when we go in is what is your policy for your residential students? Because if the residential students are allowed to cross park and use other space on campus, the system is spending too much because they're providing 2 parking spaces. So one of the things we need to do is make sure the residents are parking in residential parking. Now what we're finding, with the possible exception of what you're talking about there, because it snowed on Wednesday and we drove around, a little behavior differences on Wednesday when it snowed. But a lot of those cars that were parked all around the circle there are resident cars, and it was very obvious that they're resident cars because they didn't move. You could see the snow still piled up behind them. So one of the things we were concerned about was how many of these students are driving to this side and parking close or parking in this lot when there was really no need to do so, or the university really doesn't intend for that to happen. The parking space down in this area and this parking space, if there is a parking crunch, is really intended for the commuting students who don't have a residential space on campus to use. So those who are living on campus, the idea is if you live on campus, then you should be able to walk to class. And except for the fact that you're going down a few hundred feet sometimes to come up the other side of the ravine, the distances are not too bad here. And I think with some of the pedestrian improvements that are being considered, that'll certainly help. But
movement to like make specific residential parking, because I mean that would definitely, I think that would help. I mean, I don't know for sure,
that is
but
being strongly considered.
I think that should be considered, because if those walker students were forced, like you said, it's still far away. Like you can see, like the closest buildings are still far away, but it would still free up some spots.
Yes,
I don't know.
we're trying to get this.
I don't know.
Go ahead. We want the residential parkers parking in the residential space. If they are currently doing that, period, then we don't have to do anything. But we know the Walker apartment students are not.
Right. I mean,
So we need to
I would
control
park on
those.
the loop. If there was a spot close enough to my building, I would park there. But they removed all those spots I tried to park in for the bus stop. So I wouldn't even try anymore. So.
Well, your instincts about the residential parking is correct. We need to control that. We don't want to over-control. We want to leave lots of flexibility. It helps you use the resources that you do have. Lynn and I have had some conversations about, you know, what type of systems are most efficient. But we do need to control the residents and have them parking in their own areas. And we don't know the numbers for sure, because just because you can count permit sales, it doesn't tell you how many cars are actually here and what they're doing through the course of the week. So as we go into the longer study, we'll be getting more numbers, and it's going to look, I'll say something I haven't said in any other forums just for these folks. It's going to be a little bit of trial and error as we go through this process, because things are changing constantly and behaviors change. You know, you get into this semester a little bit farther, the behaviors are going to change a little bit. So Tuesdays and Thursdays may settle down a little bit. Wednesdays used to be the peak. Well, now we're finding this year Tuesdays and Thursdays are the peak.
I have another question.
Sure.
You mentioned like faculty parking and taking all these spots from students, but every time I've ever walked through any faculty lot, there have always been open spaces, no matter what time of day I've walked through there. And I don't know what your numbers show or anything, but just from personal experience, I've never seen a full faculty lot. So it seems kind of ridiculous to me to be designating so many spaces for faculty. And also you mentioned 48 visitor spots, but the Walker garage, the entire top is metered.
And we may be reducing that and converting some of that to residential parking.
Never used, like, because
Right.
I used to live in Erickson, that would be a nice spot
Yeah.
It would be.
to
Well-
park, but it was
Yeah.
just empty all the time because of these meters. And
Well,
then-
your observation is our observation, and the observation was made before we ever came on campus.
Yeah.
So that there's some space there that may be converted to residential. So if there is any pressure for those students to be parking down in the academic core area, we'll provide more convenient parking for them.
So why would 48 spaces be given
For visitors?
when that lot is empty?
Okay, the real reason,
Yeah,
okay, you want it straight, and I said it before, but it didn't click.
it's just because you don't want students
Circulating. We had, when you move the numbers, and in fact, what will happen is, with the additional 48 spaces up there, we might want to reduce it down to 24. If someone said we don't need visitor spaces, but the consensus is we do need some visitor spaces up there. Well, say if we said we're not going to have any visitor spaces, then we might be able to reduce the number of faculty staff spaces on Hilltop Circle that would have been designated and move them up there. But basically, I moved it.
There are currently faculty staff spaces on Hilltop?
Yes.
They can park.
No, they can park anywhere.
Right.
And they do. Right. So we know they're parking up there, and we know that once we take away the student parking that's the students are parking very close to the buildings, the pressure will be such on Hilltop Circle that the faculty and staff won't be able to find parking when they need to, and they've got to get to class. I mean, that has to happen. So back to your question, the 48 really came as a default number. We looked at the police, we looked at the van pool, we looked at the 248 spaces that we were moving, and we had 48 left, and said, well, they'll just be visitor spaces. We may need 10 visitor spaces, but.
So is there going to be any movement to maybe, highly encourage or force faculty to park in faculty designated lots? Because, you're talking about residential students taking up spots where commuters could be parking, but the faculty's doing the same thing. And I understand they have to get to class too, but we need to get to class too.
That we're going to be looking at, and not in this phase necessarily, but probably in the next phase, when we'll have more definitive numbers about what the faculty is doing, where they're parking, and how that works with the policy.
Right now, if you're trying to make faculty and staff just park in that lot up there next
Eight.
to the police station, park on the loop. So they're all gonna try to go park on the loop right next to the buildings.
Yeah.
And then all those spots next to the police station are just gonna sit empty.
We're talking about that. Yeah, the work that I'm in is largely a study in human behavior. Yeah. Any other questions?
I don't know, I'll probably come up with a bunch.
Go to the blog page.
Go to the blog
So
page.
if you come up with questions and send them to the blog, we have staff who are looking at those and will provide an answer.
So if and when you discover that there's a lot more people parking on campus now than there were when the study was done, what's gonna happen? I mean, I understand, there's limitations in the budget, there's limitations in space for, making more parking, but there's not enough parking now.
And from our side of things.
Do not have an answer for you. Because we've gotten to the point and said, based on the information we had, this would be the solution. Based on current information, it looks like there may be less space to work with. So now Helen's busy trying to reconfirm those numbers on a day-to-day basis, just about, so that we'll know, are those numbers reliable or have conditions changed? And if those lots are more full than they were before, why is that? Is it because someone's moved from someplace else? Is it because of a temporary closure of a lot? For example, we had a problem with top of the deck, lot 10 was closed for visitor parking, and it pushed a bunch of people out temporarily. But we do see a change in the pattern. We do know the student enrollment is going up because the school is attracting people from all over the place. And so that's something that has to be considered.
What about the existing fine arts building? Will that remain? That will still stay a building, an academic building here?
Mm-hmm. Yes. What are your names?
I'm Matt.
Matt and Kimberly, okay. So if I see Matt and Kimberly on the blogs, I'll know who it is. Matt and Kimberly, Friday session. That will identify you very clearly.
So, I don't know, I guess this isn't really your area, but why is this new building being made? Like,
It's a very good
the
question.
existing building is set.
Would you like the mic to get it on the record? I'll just stand closer.
Okay. Right now, the disciplines that are going into this new building are theater, music, dance, English, ancient studies, philosophy. I think that's it. And right now, the space that they have on campus is woefully inadequate. The performance spaces on campus are horrible. We don't have rehearsal spaces to speak of. And so these will create spaces for those disciplines that they need to really offer the right level of instruction. In addition, we have as a campus a shortfall in classroom space, in classroom lab space, in study spaces. And so this will start to address that. So in this building will be classrooms, general purpose classrooms, writing labs, computer labs, performance spaces, rehearsal spaces, student spaces, and faculty offices that we really need. I mean, we have several faculty sharing offices right now, and it's a huge problem for us.
I was just curious, I'm not a fine arts or any kind of major, so I'm
What's
not
your
aware.
major? Kimberly?
I'm math, so I don't see that. I
No.
was just curious, because I'm like, oh, there's a building, why are they?
See, I'm an English major, so I'm in there all the time, and
Yeah.
I think room 215 it is, there's a big hole in the ceiling, where apparently if you flush the toilet upstairs, then water starts dripping in through the ceiling because it's exposed pipes.
Are they gonna be doing
It's
like
really bad.
repairs if that building's gonna stay? Like,
Yes.
are they gonna, okay.
Yes.
Is that in the
It
budget,
probably
like
will-
along with the new building to make repairs?
It will start to happen, well, we're already doing some repairs to the building. It'll start to happen probably at a bit of an accelerated pace after this building comes online and people start moving out.
Okay.
But it will take a long time because it's a huge building. Fine Arts is a huge building, and it has a lot of challenges in it, and it's gonna cost money. So as we're able to find the money, we will be making those changes.
Anything else? Not at the moment. Well, this is an ongoing process, so we have our eyes open, and as a last plea, I would say talk to the other students, and if they have observations, concerns, and so forth, ask them to validate those concerns, not just to shoot from the hip. One day's experience may not be typical, but feed that information to us, because it's better to have hundreds of eyes and ears out there than just to rely on a small team.
Because, I mean, as students, I feel like we can tell you our problems and be like, we don't agree that, this parking thing's going to work out, but I don't really feel like it's going to change anything. You're just, I mean, I understand you're trying to address our concerns, but I don't feel like if there's an outcry, like you're taking our parking, that you're going to change it. Because I know, like, the money thing is going to come up and stuff, but
well,
I don't feel like me sitting here being like, I don't like this, is going to change what you're going to do.
it may not change the big things. The decision is made to build a building.
Right.
They're going to lose 700 spaces. So those are givens. And even if you said we're going to build a parking deck to replace those, the parking deck is not going to be as convenient as those spaces are now, because the building's going to be there. So you're left with decreasing options. In fact, as the campus grows, you're over time left with fewer and fewer options, and parking tends to get pushed out of the campus. So the distances of walking, the reliance on the shuttle system and so forth becomes more and more important as the campus grows, which is a good thing, but it's part of the growth process. But we do very much care about what's going on with the students, because we often hear things. I told one of the other groups, I listen with 2 ears. One of them, I hear all the things that I expect to hear. The normal kind of campus situations, the normal kinds of needs, the teaching assistants having all kinds of things to carry into the classroom, the IT department having to get back and forth like the squad to take care of problems all over campus, and so parking is really important to them. There are certain things that are very consistent, but there are also some things that we hear that are peculiar to this campus, and those become very quick and obvious to us, that we need to take a look and see what is different about this campus. One of the differences here is the topography. So we are having to look more at vertical distances versus horizontal distances more here than in any campus that I've worked with to this point, in fact. I mean, we know there are other campuses that have similar problems, but in our experience in working with campus, this is the first one that's had quite as much of a topographical issue. We do listen, and those things are important to us. If you'd seen some of our previous studies, you would be a believer. But we can't fix everything. We can't create space, and we don't want to burden, the university's made a decision, they don't want to burden the faculty, staff, and students with huge increases in fees when it really doesn't accomplish much, because it's not going to be any more. You're spoiled. Excuse me, you've enjoyed the great benefit of having parking right next to your academic core. That is almost unheard of in any campus across the country. To look at that parking lot right next to you won't find that. Just won't find it. So you all are joining the normal campus world here. Anything else? Listen, you guys came out today, and as many questions as you'd like to ask.
We really appreciate you coming.
We do.
Emma, any questions from you?
Not really. Can I ask how your name is spelled? So
It's B-O-U-R-Q, okay, B-O-U-R-Q-U-E.
all right, well, I asked.
Well,
Really good spelling.
Like Ray Bork, the hockey player.
All right, great, thanks.
And it's Carl Walker
Incorporated, right, not associates, right?
But, yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, it's Carl Walker, Inc.
Thanks, you guys be safe this weekend.
Yes. Enjoy the snow. We're praying that we get out today to get back home.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye.